how did the Rangers get here? You guys did a deep dive study, and a lot of signs are pointing towards the hated one, John Daniels.
Yeah, so, he has obviously...
hated by others, not by me, John.
Correct. Hated by others, not by us. But, he caught a lot of the grief for the last 6 years. And look, he put the team together.
Much of it deserved.
Much of it was deserved. He
They
basically...
sucked.
They sucked. He sold the farm to continue the run. They had that run starting in about 2009 where they got good. 2010 where they went to the World Series, 2011, and they continued it all the way till about 2016. They were very, very good. At the later part, they were not necessarily title contenders. They should have beat Toronto when they blew the lead in 2015. They didn't. But 2014, whatever year it was, he sold out to continue that run, and it killed him, and it cost him his job ultimately. But I went to see how this team was actually built. Okay, how the Rangers, the current Rangers, the 2023 Rangers were built. Now, Chris Young was named GM in December of 2020. All right, that's middle of COVID. December 4th was the date. John Daniels was his boss. He was president of baseball operations. He had to sign off on every move. 2 days later, all right. Well, first off, let's go back to here. JD was let go on August 17th of 2022. So last year. So from December of 2020 till August 17th of 22 last year, he was essentially in charge, the boss of Chris Young. In 2019, before Young gets there, they trade cash considerations to St. Louis for Adolis Garcia.
Good trade.
Got it for cash. They also sent Connor Zadzik to Seattle for Grant Anderson. Zadzik is in the minors with the St. Paul Saints. Grant Anderson had an historic debut. Did not pitch very well the other night. In 2020, 4 days after they agreed to terms with Chris Young, they trade Lance Lynn to Chicago for Dane Dunning. My assumption is that in 4 days, he didn't get to the job and all of a sudden trade Lance Lynn.
Have the total power and control.
Yeah.
And we loved Lance Lynn here.
And we did.
And not his personality, but his performance.
And to be fair, I killed them for not trading him at the deadline. They should have traded him at the deadline so a team could get 2 years out of him instead of just one.
Right, like they should have done with Martin Perez last year.
And Lance Lynn, but I don't know now the importance of having starting pitching with DeGrom out. You may be desperately reliant on Martin Perez. Someone had said Lance Lynn could be a Ranger possibility as well. He's got a 6.72 earned run average right now. Not good.
No, not good. Now, 2 days after that trade, so now we're up to December 10th, they traded Heriberto Hernandez, Oslevis Busabe, and Alex Avalos to Tampa for Nathaniel Lowe. Now, how are those former Ranger farmhands doing? Hernandez is the Rays' 17th best prospect, which is actually pretty good considering the Rays. He's in AA. Busabe is the Rays' 7th best prospect. He's in AAA. And Avalos has a decent, had a decent trajectory. That's kind of subsided a little bit. 2021, February of 21 rolls around. January, February. They trade Elvis to Oakland. Who do they get in that deal? Jonah Heim.
Dude. So far, John Daniels deserves credit for Adolis Garcia, Dane Dunning, Nate Lowe, Jonah Heim, and we'll see about Grant Anderson.
Yeah. Now, that deal was made 3 months after Young arrived, so it's possible his hands are dirty in this one, but I assume in the first two, when it was 4 days and 6 days after he got here, he didn't have a major role.
He went right to work.
Later that year at the deadline, they send Joey Gallo to the Yankees. In return, they get Josh Smith, Ezekiel Duran, Glenn Otto, and they also got one other part of that deal. Smith and Duran have had, they've massively contributed this year. This is one of the better trade returns you're going to see. Gallo did absolutely nothing in New York. Doing a little bit better in Minnesota, but not much. But it's also what they didn't do. They didn't go all in for Anthony Rendon. They tried.
Yep.
Was it a fake offer? was it 6 for 180 or something? It was a fake offer, and he winds up getting more. Whatever like the rumor was, they wanted to make it appear like they were going to go sign him, but he was going to take a hometown discount. Never did. They just didn't match. They also went after Carlos Rodon this year, and he wanted to come here. We know for a fact Carlos wanted to come here. Who did they choose over him? Who did they give the money to instead of him?
DeGrom.
Evaldi.
Oh, Evaldi.
So, and Nathan's a Cy Young candidate. Rodon, how many innings has he pitched this year?
0.
He's had a back issue. Now, he's throwing bullpens. He threw a simulated game the other day. They're excited about him in New York, whatever. You know, he was also in charge when they signed Seager and Simeon. You know, he was the president of baseball operations. He's going to get none of this credit. Chris Young's going to win Executive of the Year this year, most likely. And he may have put 0 of this team together except for Evaldi and DeGrom. And, you know, because John Gray was also acquired under JD, correct?
Yeah, I do think that by 21, we can probably start assuming that he was involved in those moves.
Oh, he was definitely involved.
So Seager,
yes.
Simeon, the decision not to go get Story,
yes.
picking Seager over Story turned out to be a good move. I do think that he was probably heavily involved in those, but definitely
Absolutely.
Some of those value trades at the beginning of, like, the end of 2019 into the beginning of 2020. So Heim, getting Adolis, things like that. That's definitely John Daniels' contribution.
Yeah, it definitely is JD contributing to this one. But you know, he's going to win Executive of the Year. He did. You know, he made the move for Bochy. Mm-hmm. He decided to move on from Woody and bring Bochy in. So we'll see where this thing goes. He's going to wind up winning Executive of the Year. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but we will never give JD credit for this.
No,
just like Brian Cashman gets all the credit for the Yankees dynasty in the 90s, and he didn't put any of it together. Gene Michael did. He gets none of the credit. You know, Jimmy gets all the credit. Jerry gets none of it.
Yep.
You know, even though Jerry's the boss. It's the way it works in sports.
I can't remember. It may have been you. It may have been Hagee. I can't remember who
was it. A
mentions.
Good point?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was me.
It was you. I can't remember who mentioned this, and I think it was off the air the other day, where it's like, how wild is it that Chris Young will probably win Executive of the Year?
Yeah, that was Hagee.
Having made the worst contract signing of the offseason, arguably.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
How often does that happen where the guy who made the offseason acquisition that is probably the worst is going to end up winning Executive of the Year?
That's fair. But, you know, it's at the end of the day.
What would Bassick say to this list, by the way? He'd stutter and stammer, and he'd start getting worked up and say how John Daniels doesn't deserve it. And also the way that they've built, and I'm not insulting Mike, I'm trolling Mike, and maybe insulting him a little. He said, and he brought, you know, history and data behind his point. You have to draft and develop. You have to draft and develop. Have the Rangers done it? Seager, Simeon, Evaldi, and these trades, right? Adolis and Nate Lowe and Jonah Heim and Dane Dunning. Now, maybe they developed Dane Dunning or Jonah Heim. I don't know how much, you know, what effect their coaching has had on them behind the scenes. The point is, those guys, Duran, they did not come up in the Rangers system. So it's been these minor trades, Seager and Simeon, along with Bochy. So they haven't done it the way you're supposed to with drafting and developing.
Right. Now, look, there's a lot of examples of teams that, and listen, this I think there's something something should be said of knowing who you are and what you're able to do. I think deep down they know they can't develop players. We got a long track record of not being able to develop players.
Young is clicking finally.
Josh Young, yes.
Josh Young is finally clicking.
Now, look, he was a very highly regarded prospect. When you pick 8th, you should get a good player. You should get a very good player.
Hasn't always worked out.
Hasn't always worked out that way, but you should get a very good player. You know, they hit on Teixeira and they picked him in the top 10. You know, that was he was tremendous. So like, look, they have not done a great job of drafting. That's still their problem, and that still is probably what's going to keep them from reaching their ultimate goal. If it does, is that they're so reliant on making trades to get players, so other teams have developed instead of developing their own. They can't develop Jack Leiter. Can't. Like,
Bleacher Report had an article actually a couple weeks ago about stacking the teams in terms of the MLB organizations and how good they are at developing pitching. And the Rangers came in at the bottom 5. as one of the worst organizations in sports at developing pitching. And that's one of the things that I think concerned everybody about, like when you take a guy like Kumar Rocker, and I understand a lot of it was about getting Brock Porter later on in the draft in the 4th round with the extra slot money or whatever else. But that's the thing that it's like, why are you taking a dicey pitching prospect when you haven't shown the ability to develop them? That's why they needed to hit on these sorts of trades and things like that. They've needed to build with veteran acquisitions. And they've always, even when they've struggled, they've always done that well. Mike Minor, Lance Lynn, guys like that. They've always done a good job having them rebound.
And I think, NFL teams, right, a lot of times they'll default to what they're good at. Cowboys are very good at drafting offensive line. They can target, spot, identify a really good offensive lineman. They do a really good job of drafting offensive line. Some teams do a really good job of acquiring bullpen. So stick with what you're good at. The Rangers for years did a really good job in the international market. Really good job. Continue doing that. If you can't draft and develop, and they really have shown that for the most part they haven't been able to, do what you're good at. Identify old starting pitching, rebound them, flip them. The problem is that sometimes you get caught up like, well, can we make a run? No, stay the course. Stay the course. You got to be able to recognize. The New York Giants needed to recognize last year they overachieved. Okay?
I don't remember us disagreeing in the moment when they went all in. When they pushed the chips to the middle of the table, we supported it.
In 2016, you mean?
They've done it. They did it a couple times.
Yeah, I was fine with that back then.
And
yeah,
now we're going to have that conversation again here now. If they go all in for an ace replacement, I'm going to support it right now, depending on who the ace is.
Yes, that's what it is.
Right.
Depends on who it is. Go get Beltran and Lucroy, great. If it's a Matt Garza, Ryan Dempster type of trade like David Murphy was talking about yesterday, not so much.
Yeah, like, look, the hometown fans are the last to admit someone is overachieving. We told the Giants they were overachieving. Giant fans did not want to hear that, did they?
No.
They did not believe they were overachieving.
Minnesota.
They didn't want to hear that. Somebody outside DFW might say, hey, the Rangers are overachieving, stay the course. We're not going to say that because we don't want to hear that.
Well, I believe it this time. I thought that they overachieved in Banny's 2 division titles.
They absolutely did.
Those teams weren't that good. We said that at the time. We try to keep it real, but that's how the Rangers got here. How much credit are y'all willing to give John Daniels on the truckwreck.com text line as they take on the Rays? Where's John Daniels right now?
Southlake? No, he's with the Rays.